future. There are no people in the future. No people at all. There are no people in the future. Where did all my people go? There are no people in the future. Let me try my people call. Where are all my people? Where are all my people? I guess I'll fly away now.
Hey, everybody, welcome. It is Friday, August 19th, 2022, and yeah, I feel a little rusty at this stuff. It's been a bit. It's been a minute, as they say. Welcome to Raging Chicken's Out to Coot podcast. It's our Friday Politics Roundup, everybody. This is Kevin Mahoney, creator and founder of Raging Chicken. Each week, we break down the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics, and I am joined once again today by the one, the only, Amy Knecht, everybody. Woo! You can help support this show by becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/rcpress. You can also help out the show by, checking out our YouTube channel if you're not there already. Smash that subscribe button, like the stream for this show, and hit that notification bell so you know every time that we go live. And look, everybody, you know it, I know it. We got to make sure that Paul Martino and his kind of plutocrat friends don't get to buy our schools and push their extremist politics in our community. Raging Chicken has teamed up with Levelfield to launch a truly community-rooted pact to invest in organizing, support local and statewide progressive candidates, and unmask the toxic organizations injecting our communities with right-wing extremism. Yes, we're putting small dollar donations to work to beat back the power of big money. You can get more information and drop your donation at ragingchicken.levelfield.net. That's ragingchicken.levelfield.net. Well, on this week's show, some of the things that we'll kind of get into. So, of course, the Biden administration and Joe Biden has personally signed, finally signed the Build Back a Little Bit bill, aka the Inflation Reduction Act. Yes, it is the biggest climate legislation in U.S. history. No, it will not be enough. And we are once again putting faith in the market and the tax code because apparently, that's the only way we can do policy in this country. It's crazy. Speaking of climate change, you checked out the pictures of the Colorado River, Lake Mead? Yep, historic lows. Again. It's pretty crazy. The pics are absolutely unbelievable. And look, and it's not just the U.S., right? If you have checked out the astounding pictures, I think it's the Loire River. I'm close to that, the Loire River. Amy and I were practicing this before the show. Loire River, that's France's longest river. It's been reduced to a trickle in parts of the country, and it is pretty much telling us what our climate future is going to look like. And a new study that emerged, keeping on the kind of bad climate news, emerged that basically that's showing there's an emergence of an extreme heat belt in the United States. What does that mean? Well, by 2053, an area running from Texas to Illinois will hit a heat index of at least 125 degrees at least once a year. And right now, we've seen strings of heat indexes over 100 degrees for 20 days in a row. By that same date, 2053, it's going to be over 70 days in a row of a heat index over 100. Now, that's one thing when you're talking about in the dry heat in some areas where they're more used to it. But when you're talking about humid, hot weather, you're talking about weather that kills. That's where we're headed, folks. That's where we're headed. Another, I don't know if you call this even good news as much as expected news, but yes, the right-wing Republican Liz Cheney, aka the darling of centrist Democrats right now, but Liz Cheney, yes, to no one's surprise, lost her primary to a big lie proponent, and she didn't just lose it; she was swamped. Yes, which was expected. Which was expected. To be fair. And now she's even eyeing a presidential run in 2024. Will she win? I don't even think she thinks she's going to win, but can she cause massive disruption in the Republican Party, which I think is her intention at this point? Let's hope so. And today, a little closer to home, yes, school boards are back in session. Palisades held its first meeting of the new school year this past Wednesday night. A few irate parents showed up and, demanded answers from the superintendent over a trespassing incident that occurred at one of the elementary schools. details on that. And of course, the Penridge School District is doing their best to pass the anti-student and faculty and staff expression policy, which will basically means that you can only wear white t-shirts and you have to shut your mouth the entire day, right? Or the school board, led by Joan Cullen, is going to lash you to a post out in front by their new rain garden and shame you until you accept Jesus into your life. It's basically something like that. But ACLU's on the tip, NAACP is on the tip. It's like, Penridge is just setting themselves up for kind of the national spotlight and lots of legal action. So here we go.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy. And John Fetterman is heating up the troll machine once again. Yes, he's back on the campaign trail. Was just out in Erie, Pennsylvania. But in his race against the Wizard of Oz, man, Fetterman is like leaving no stone unturned, right? Even, if that means kind of going to see what it's like to shop at Wegner's. We got to shop at Wegner's for some crudité. What's a crudité? Yeah, it's a veggie tray for us plain folks, everybody. Yes, Dr. Oz clearly showing he does not know how grocery stores work, does not know that prices sometimes mean by the pound, and has some strange idea about dipping asparagus into salsa. So I have no idea what kind of freaking parties that guy holds, but I don't want to go near him, especially since it means driving in New Jersey. So whatever you go. And the guy can't count how many houses he has. Whatever. It's crazy. In today's last call, we'll see what's kind of happening, what's kind of going around. News here. My big news that just came up in the D&D world. Wizards of the Coast announced the coming of One D&D, which is going to be launched in 2024. I have already signed up to playtest some stuff, which I'm really excited about. And basically what that means is that they're going to be able to kind of create, they got these great digital platforms. Wizards of the Coast just acquired D&D Beyond this past year. There's a great partnership going on there. They're basically going to have a one-stop place where you can get all access to all your books, all of the materials that you need, and a next generation digital play space that's going to be driven by Unreal Engine. And anybody out there who's a video game kind of person knows that the Unreal Engine is phenomenal. And it's all going to be available at D&D Beyond. They're just starting to roll some of that stuff out now. Of course, Spelljammer is out. That's been a long-awaited Space Adventures. That's just kind of dropped this week, too, as well. So we'll see what else is going on. And for more PA Progressive Talk, tune to the Rick Smith Show's live stream at 9 p.m. Eastern on his YouTube channel, Twitter, and Facebook. Subscribe to his podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Head on over to the ricksmithshow.com for the latest of all his platforms. I can't wait. I'm going to be seeing Rick in 2 weeks. Yes, Rick and I are going to be checking out the Dropkick Murphys, everybody. Yes, we are. We're bringing the rage to the Dropkick Murphy show coming up. I'm very excited to be going out to Rick. Going out there with Rick and spending that evening collaborating and kind of just doing some soul cleansing at that night. And everybody, season 2 of the Sisters of the Night Caucus podcast is kind of in the full stream. You can find it on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. The amazing PA women stirring the political cauldron behind the podcast rock the house, and they know where the bodies are buried. Make sure to follow them on Twitter at The Night Caucus. That's at The Night Caucus on Twitter. And attention all you gamers out there, the Game Inn, that's with 2 N's. The Game Inn is a Quakertown-based black family-owned gaming store. They're friends of the show, and they've got everything from retro N64s, the latest consoles, video games for all platforms, collectibles, action figures, Funko Pops, walls of Funko Pops, right? And with school starting up, kids get discounts. I think they're going to carry this through in this school year too as well. Kids will get discounts for A's in the report card. Check them out on their Facebook page. Follow them on Twitter at The Game In with 2 N's. Got a question about a game, look for something hard to get, shoot them a message or drop them an email at thegameinpa@gmail.com. Special shout out goes to Jonathan Mann, who wrote our intro song, There Are No People in the Future. Check out all his great stuff on his YouTube page and follow him on Twitter at SongADayman. That's with 2 N's. That's at SongADayman on Twitter. And we're going to be getting Out the Coop Live back up and running. I apologize for missing. I don't know. I think I mentioned this on my last show towards the end of the show when I was talking to Mark Pinsley. But I was out with I had some health-related issues. Turns out I thought I had COVID. It was not COVID. It turns out that I had an infection in my leg, that my leg was all swelled up. And on top of that, I had a blood clot in my leg, which can get pretty serious. So I had to kind of run through a bunch of tests and now I got these medications and all that kind of fun stuff. I tell you, it's wonderful getting old, and it's wonderful. Thank God, at least I got it when I did. So, but it's been a weird kind of couple of weeks, and now it's kind of game on to try to before the semester starts. My kids go back to school, so I'm getting things back up and running now. So sorry about that. For everybody who's wondering what's going on, that's what's been going on. And look, if we want a progressive future, we need progressive media. Support Pull No Punches, homegrown progressive media today. Become a patron of Raging Chicken for as little as $5 a month. Just head on over to patreon.com/rcpress. We're here for the fight, but we need you. Become a patron for the price of a good beer once a month. Help keep the media in the movement and the movement in the media. Become a patron for as little as $5 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/rcpress today. Well, there we have it. Welcome, Amy.
Hi. Good morning.
Hey, it's great to be back here. And I apologize to you two for having to kind of like postpone and kind of reschedule our Fridays here for.
Oh, that's all right. The summers always get crazy.
It's been nuts.
Especially at the end of the summer. I said the summers always get nuts, especially towards the end.
Yeah, I find it, especially it's like, it seems like there's like this lull that happens in the middle. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, we wanted to do this, we wanted to do that. And then there's like the school stuff, preparations to get the kids back to school. And
it doesn't help that they go back to school before Labor Day. So
yeah, it does not. It does not. I think the one saving grace for me is that my semester begins the same day that theirs does this year. Yeah. So I'm back the same day that they are. And that's a plus and a minus. Sometimes if I went back later, it would be that I'd get like a few extra days to actually work on my stuff. But if I go back before they do, then it's always kind of trying to figure out what you're going to do for kid care and things like that. But
yeah.
But how's your summer wrapping up?
It's doing pretty good. Yeah, we haven't been doing, I think, as much as we had wanted to this summer.
Yeah.
But that's really a lot of it had to do with gas prices and some traveling. But for the most part, I got to hit a really awesome concert this summer. My kids have been having a great time doing their thing. So it's good. I'm ready for school to start, though.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Yeah, I never thought that I would have, I would say that, look, I'm going to actually have more time to focus on some things when school starts than as opposed to less, because the summer, just like, I'm here with my kids. That's what I do.
Yeah, those 6 hours during the day are nice.
Yeah, they are indeed. All right. Well, okay, we're going to get, so just folks, this is some programming stuff. So I know that we'll be back in this, and I know that, that folks I've never heard this as a criticism, but everybody, I will say, like, whoa, you guys had like a 3-hour show today. Right, that kind of thing. So hopefully we're gonna start the show a little bit earlier on Fridays. That has to do with some of my scheduling stuff that I've got to figure out. So probably running really at 10 instead of 11, which we were going up before, which actually brings us back to the roots of the show. That's when we used to start back in the day. And we'll probably try to keep the show kind of like an hour, and, on long days, maybe go up to an hour and a half, just so that folks don't feel they have to spend their entire day, right, to catch up on the
but
podcast.
There's so much always going on.
There is, and that was the problem. I swear, it's like when we started, when Sean and I we started the on the Friday show. It was kind of like in the year leading up to 2016 election, and there was a lot going on. But we were able to kind of keep the show about hour and 15 minutes or so, and we had it kind of running pretty good. But then it just, like, the fire hose just opened, and it feels like it just hasn't stopped. So
yeah, ditto on that feeling.
So what's it? Well, I guess, and this was a big week. We're not going to get into a whole bunch of the kind of Trump Mar-a-Lago kind of,
Oh my gosh, I almost forgot about that.
Yeah, I know. It's like, look, if anybody wants to know what is going on in the Trump campaign, just, go watch your MSNBC, because that's all they freaking run with these days. And look, again, it reminds me, it's a different version of the Russia time. it's like I remember I used to tune in the MSNBC, and when I used to watch MSNBC, I said, well, why? People would say, why you watch MSNBC? I said, well, I'm just checking to see what's happening with the Russia stuff, right? Because they know how to run with one story, right?
Yeah.
As a network, and so that's kind of what they're doing now. But there's like really significant developments in the kind of several different criminal probes, plus in the J6 hearing. So. Lots of stuff that's happening over there. So we're not going to get into too much of that today, I don't think. But the big news of the week, at the national level at least, was Joe Biden finally signed the Inflation Reduction Act, which is, we've been kind of terming it the Build Back Just a Little Bit bill, right? It's not really Build Back Better. We're going to build back a little bit. And thanks because, King Mansion finally decided to get on board with some climate reduction stuff. Of course, he had to mitigate that with, some means testing on how it would work and get rid of any direct investment in climate, kind of making the transition to more, climate friendly fuels, and the kind of transitions about, move to electric vehicles and for public transportation. No, instead, we're just going to use the tax code to try to kind of provide people carrots with very few sticks to get us to a livable climate future. But I don't know.
Did you read the description of it that the White House put out?
I did.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that in the description they're using their words, very deliberately here, and it says it'll lower the deficit and ask the super wealthy and corporations to pay their fair share. They're going to ask them.
Yep. I think that happens. Yeah, I think they actually have to I think it's in the bill that there's going to be they have to get down on their hands and knees and plead the rich to pay their fair share. I think that's in the bill. It's like...
Well, it is, because when they talk about the tax code portion of it, it says, they're going to crack down on these large profitable corporations, but if they're going to ask them to pay, I guess they could refuse then. And it only says here they're imposing a 1% surcharge on corporate stock buybacks that will encourage businesses to invest. Invest in what? Themselves again, or their workers? Right.
Well, it will not. I mean, look, there was the American Prospect has got a great podcast. I'm just forgetting the name of it, but it's like, it's listed on their page. And just the most recent episode, or at least this past week, they had David Dayen on, who's basically their kind of like managing editor. Who really digs down on the policy on this stuff. And that's one of the points that he makes on that podcast was that, look, or it's in the articles too as well, that American Prospect is like, look, that whole idea that you basically tax these corporate profits, right, or these kind of stock buybacks, is going to incentivize them to invest in their companies and their workers. There's not a single example of that to point to where you can show that logic has worked. So.
Really? Well, you should tell the writers of AEI Economics that, because they had something to say about the Build Back Better.
Oh, what did they have to say?
Oh, let's see. Where was it? Oh, Phil Graham reflected on the signing of the IRA and how we could learn from the economic leadership of Ronald Reagan.
Break the unions, stoke up racism, and give the money to the rich. That's what we're going to learn from?
Pretty much. Yeah, they're talking about the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act. That was before me.
It's whatever. It never works. Like they were pointing to one of the things that they were, one of the examples that I heard, I'm not sure if it was through this interview with David Dayen, or if it was another economist that was talking about this. But they were saying is like, that was the logic they gave to what to do with all these foreign profits, right? Mm-hmm. So basically these companies were, holding their profits overseas so they didn't have to pay U.S. tax on it. So there was always this incentive or there was this argument to say, well, look, we're going to give them a tax holiday so that they can repatriate their money, right? So basically bring it back into U.S. banks and have it here in the U.S. so that they will invest in their companies and create American jobs. Yeah. And they've done that periodically since like the 1980s. And every single time that they do that, right, there is no investment. right? There are no jobs created. As a matter of fact, there's evidence to show that once they brought the money back, they cut their workforce, and they use that money to enrich their CEOs. So the logic doesn't work. But whatever. I mean, look, we're talking about a dystopian climate future here. So if that's what we've got to do at this point, I mean, I guess you got to do something, but let's not pretend, right? I mean,
anything's better than not, I guess, but the slowness and the baby steps, it's becoming almost intolerable at this point, right? I mean, with the Democratic Party's tolerance of moderate Democrats, right, like Joe Manchin, and how he can stop the movement of these things going forward, and I really, really feel that that's like such an undemocratic process right there, that one person in the party or one or two people in the party can hold this up. Right. So, I mean, and it's apparent. They don't even try. I mean, Manchin doesn't even try to hide the fact that he is, supported by fossil fuel industries. So it's disgusting.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's, I don't know. I can't believe we're at a point where I guess I can believe it, but there's part of me that is just will never believe that this is like the reality that we live in, that we're literally like staring down like, the barrel of the climate gun, if you will. And the best that we can do is kind of, provide carrots and ask the person with the gun to please don't kill me. I mean, it's like,
right.
I mean, it's frightening. I mean, especially when you can see what the like alternative options were. I mean, I know that there's plans. There's these kind of like public transportation plans. I know Pennsylvania's put out one. Well, what would it actually look like to invest in like trains and public transportation to kind of, start getting cars off the road? If people could have had the choice, actually, okay, I don't need to drive my car from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh. I don't need to drive my car from, Harrisburg to Scranton, but I could actually hop on a train to do it. That's going to reduce traffic on the roads, right? And so there's a plan that's out there to do it, but there's no money and no initiative to do it. I mean, you heard nothing but austerity measures at the state level. And yes, now there's some tax incentives to turn to kind of green fuels for some corporations and some power companies, but I don't know if we're going to get there in time. I mean, and that's been evident by, the pictures we're seeing about what's, these kind of rivers, both, out west here in this country and kind of in Europe.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Colorado River, I mean, that's one of my favorite rivers in the country, and it's so big, it's so majestic. You think that like it would be impossible, right, to have a river like that dry up. But the one report that I had, what was it that was reading? It was an NPR report, and I mean, they talked about, I think it's Lake Mead, right, which is part of that Colorado River system, has dropped 175 feet over the past 20 years. I mean, that's a lot of water, especially out in the desert, to be gone.
Yep.
So it's definitely a crying shame. And it sucks though too, because like we were talking before the show, and you were saying how many states, like, the percentage of water used by the states, and that, agriculture takes up what, 3/4 of that water, of the usage of it, and most of it's going to California.
Yep.
So that leaves some of the drier states down, and then Mexico too, who is also, who benefits, from the Colorado River. I think it's dry, right? The Sea of Cortez, where it comes out. Yeah. I don't even think there's anything coming out right now.
It's crazy. I mean, especially saying this is what we've done to our kind of natural resource. Now, again, this is not only climate based, right? So we should be clear about that. I mean, climate is just kind of the climate change, and the kind of the droughts and the heat is just exacerbating a pre-existing problem about this kind of like unfettered development and, lack of concern about, proper stewardship of natural resources in the land. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, and this is what Amy was just saying in terms of the amount of water being used. I mean, one of the things, there's a great piece in the American Prospect on this, which kind of runs through part of the problem is like, there's this the Upper Colorado River Commission kind of has basically been drawing attention to this stuff for years. And now we find out that, look, there's real disparities in terms of how that river is used. And, there's all these different claims and even states being unable to agree about, taking care of the river for the next generations, right? Or the generations after that. Instead, it's all short-term development, kind of like, economic capitalist development, and that's it.
Yeah.
And so much of that water, like Amy was saying, is just going to, the San Joaquin Valley and out in California to produce these kind of, factory farms worth of agricultural crops. And it's true. They're finally kind of shifting over to some more kind of drought resistant crops and, to irrigation methods that don't just shoot the water off of the air, but are actually kind of running closer to the ground. So you're not wasting all that water. But, it's kind of like a little too late in many ways, because you got all those people, the rapid areas of development like Arizona, Las Vegas, New Mexico to a lesser degree, who are rapidly developing and have no water, right? That's just going to make matters worse. So
yeah, that Prospect article, and they say, what did they say in here? So there's a lot of finger pointing on between states, because there isn't one agency that oversees the Colorado River. It's like a collection of different states, and in the article they call it, trying to get the states to consult with each other on their strategies. And this is a quote, they call it a herding cats framework.
Yeah.
It says it's stymied region-wide progress and has led to the current situation with the borough imposing restrictions on some states. So I can only imagine what herding cats is trying to be like.
Right. No, exactly. So here from that same article, so people kind of do a little deeper dig. So this down a little bit says, although the Bureau of Reclamation oversees both basins, the states are left to manage their own water use and consult them here. This is the herding cats framework that has stymied nationwide progress, led to current situation. This is the part that Amy is pointing to. And then you go down in this a little bit. So if you look at the Bureau imposes reductions on some states like Arizona and Nevada, but not others, California, based on a system that prioritizes water allocation users, with fast developing California having more high priority users than Arizona. Right? By 2040, California will lose 10% of its water supply to replace those lost supplies. State officials plan to investigate desalination and other offers. The agricultural sector consumes 80% of the basin's water, far eclipsing the municipal, tribal nation, power generation, and recreational uses. Right? Yeah. Farmers have responded by switching to drought-resistant crops, as I was mentioning, and shifting some of the growing to the Mississippi Delta. And this is the key, right? Where is it? Where is it here? In the West, much of the water destined for human consumption goes to outdoor uses, such as garden and lawn maintenance. Right?
Gotta have that lawn.
Exactly.
In the desert, gotta have grass growing.
Exactly. And again, there's been, this is what I hate to sound like a downer on this stuff all the time, because there has been lots of pushes to, shift to kind of sustainable lawns, and where you're actually using rock gardens and indigenous plants as opposed to this other stuff. But it's too slow,
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think it's funny. You go out west, and I always thought it was hilarious. You go out west, and people are living in the desert when you have all these natural cactuses, and you don't even have to do much to maintain a yard out there. But then you have people trying to grow turf and grass in the middle of a desert, and I'm just like, this is not natural for here. Why are you even trying? It does, and it consumes so much water.
Yep.
So much water.
It's crazy, and it's not just what's happening in the U.S., right? I mean, we talked to. I'm going to get the Loire. Did I get it right?
The Loire, the River Loire.
Yeah, the River. I have no French. Amy has some French, but it's France's.
Minuscule French. Yeah. I can count.
You can count.
I can count, and I can say I love cheese.
There you go. Go say it. How do you say I love cheese?
It's j'adore fromage.
Okay, so that's something I got to remember, because I do love cheese.
Did you know where I learned that from?
No.
I did not learn that in my French class. I learned that from Dexter's Laboratory. It was a cartoon on Cartoon Network back in the day.
There you go.
So I'm not sure if that's correct, but.
But yeah, I'm going to say yes. Yes, it is. Oh, God. It's where I learned most of my classical music, right? Bugs Bunny, right?
There you go.
Same thing. So true. But this is France's longest river, and the pictures of it are incredible. I mean, you have this. I mean, you're talking about this like sustained drought throughout kind of large sections of Europe, like Spain, France, and kind of in particular. We saw the historic wildfires that have been purging up there, and now to see that France's longest river, and I mean, France is known for its like it's agricultural. It's like beautiful fields
Great
and wine
wine.
country and all that. And here we've got the river drying up over there too.
And it's a large river. Like it's not. I mean, it's wide. It reminds me of sections of the Mississippi. Looking at the photos,
Yep.
it's a wide river.
Yep.
That's a lot of water.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. And there's like all these kind of like UNESCO World Heritage castles and things like this that are kind of known to be on this
Yeah.
river. They're they're no longer like there's no water around them anymore. It's it's pretty crazy. The boats are stranded. My wife was actually just telling me there was like on the Rhine River in Germany, the border of Germany and France, where you have these kind of barges and these cruises up the Rhine River to kind of, along all these famous castles and everything like this. There's sections of the
Hmm.
Rhine River that the boats can't get through because there's no water. So they're being diverted through these kind of like canal systems to just try to even kind of maintain something of those tours because you can't go on them anymore.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean it's a shame when we start to lose our natural resources because it's not just for utilization for us and consumption. It's also more than that, right?
Yeah.
Like it contributes to our ecosystem, our mental health overall, our physical health. I mean, just going outside and being able to breathe fresh air, look at green trees and fresh water running, I think does a lot for humanity.
Yep. Yep.
And it is a shame. Really sad to see that happening here in obviously the United States, but also worldwide as well.
Yep. And you start thinking about the implications of like the secondary implications of this drying up. I mean, one obviously the most direct is, oh my God, the water's not there anymore, and there's question about are we going to be able to get enough water for for drinking and all this other stuff. But then you think, just like I mentioned, about the economic impacts that you have. About this is what people would go to Europe for, and to go on these rivers, and now
Hmm.
you can't. Then you have all the fish, right, dead. Right, because there's no water for them to swim in, right? Or the water gets so small that the water heats up so much that they die for because the water's too hot.
Yeah.
And there's some of these rivers, right, that feed into these different reservoirs that are used to cool nuclear power plants, right? They said, like for example, in this piece from Reuters, it's talking about this here. The river flow. They're talking about the in France again is about 40 cubic meters per second, less than 20th of average of annual levels. It would be even lower if authorities did not release water from dams at Nassau and the Villars, built in 1980s, partly to guarantee cooling water supply to 4 nuclear power plants built along the river.
Oh my goodness.
Right, so you're keeping the river going by using this water that you put there to make sure that the nuclear power plants have enough cooling. Right, it doesn't take like a genius to realize, well, what happens when that water starts to be depleted. Right, or what happens if there's an
Yeah.
emergency but you've released the water downstream. Right, I mean, this is pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah, and they're talking about they're talking about a lot of the same problems like we're having here that they're having in France. It says here in that in a Reuters article about it, it says days after major wildfires hit France, then you had torrential rain flooding parts of Paris and southern France, while in some villages in the south, water had to be brought in by trucks because natural springs had run dry. Like that's insane.
It is.
It's just and like I said, you cannot deny this. I don't know who is even still trying to deny that the fact that there's climate change happening,
No, it's crazy. And
extreme climate change.
exactly. And I think that it's funny because it's not funny, but it's I do think that this is more so than even like 5 years ago or so. I think it's
Hmm.
there's more people get that than I think even did about 5 years ago. Even those folks who are kind of Republicans who have been kind of voting for those folks and I think on a daily basis, because it's starting to hit people's daily lives like every single year, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's the fact that, I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, everything like in my neighborhood, in my area, everything's dying. right? Because there's been no rain, and every time.
Yeah, we haven't have too many issues. Well, it's dry. I happen to live underneath a big like spring system, like a natural underground spring
Hmm.
system. So our well is usually pretty well, like we don't have to worry about that too much. But I generally always have moist grass because of where we live. Like even in a drought, like
Yeah.
the ground's a little spongy. The ground is not spongy. This hasn't happened in a long time.
Yeah.
A long time. And I do have a pond, right? So like the water levels have been slowly going down.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Just from the lack of rain that we've had.
Yeah, it's just the lack. I mean, every time, it's almost like a joke at this point. But every time that they call for rain, you're like, well, let's wait till tomorrow because then
Oh yeah.
it's
Oh
not
yeah.
going to happen. It's not going to
Nope.
happen.
Nope. I think
So
we've had one thunderstorm.
yeah, it's nuts.
So
Well, there's also this, again, to stay on the doom and gloom and climate stuff, but there's, the new study this came from this organization. It's called First Street Foundation. And they report on, they're a nonprofit organization. They just kind of look at kind of climate impacts. They kind of bring in scientists to do analyses. What's this going to look like? And they found out that they're basically saying warning of this extreme heat belt in the United States it's already developing, that extends from Texas up through Illinois, right, because they basically the heart of the country. And this is the kind of the new part, right, because we already know that there's you've got the like Arizona, what we talked about, Arizona, New Mexico, different parts of Texas that are are extraordinarily hot and dry. But now you're talking
mhm.
about kind of northern Texas up through the kind of the center of the country, and they're saying this is going to be like this extreme heat belt. And if I actually look at some of their maps, and there's the number of 100 plus days also extends up to Pennsylvania, right? Up to kind of especially eastern Pennsylvania. It
Yeah.
won't be quite as extreme as what you're seeing in the center of the country. But if you're talking about, 70, plus days in a row of 100 plus heat index, that's crazy.
It is. I don't know if anybody who's listening has ever, lived out west or been out west or anything like that, but when it gets up to those higher temperatures, it's brutal.
Yep.
It's brutal. And then to combine that in places like Pennsylvania who have high humidity during the summer, it's going to be unbearable.
Well, and that's what, in part they're pointing to in this report too, as well, is you get up to we start hitting heat indexes of it. They say part of this extreme heat belt will mean heat index of at least 125 degrees at least one day a year, right?
Hmm.
And I heard some reporting about this report too as well, and some of the scientists who were talking about it said they also had this mode of this word of caution to say, we also thought that we weren't going to hit some of these markers that we hit this summer until like 2030, 2035. So we're already ahead of schedule on this. So if
Yeah.
you're talking about 125 degrees, you're once you hit this kind of wet bulb temperature, I'm forgetting what the exact temperature is, but once you get to a certain temperature, the human body can no longer cool itself by itself. And it
Yep.
like literally your body will start to cook because it cannot get rid of the heat unless you get into cooling. And so that means you got to be in AC or in some sort of cool environment. And if it means to be in AC, that also means that you're drawing on more carbon and more energy, which is
Yeah.
feeding a cycle. I mean, it gets like, it's super bad. And then if you're just going to expand that out, it's like, yeah, it's great for those of us who get to live in climates, right, or in areas that are a little bit more cool or have the luxury of AC. But you're talking about huge numbers of people in this country that do not have AC, right? Do not have the money to kind of run AC all summer long. Elderly people who
Yeah.
are kind of really susceptible to this stuff, and those folks who just live in parts of the country that are just going to be baking. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, because some of these areas, people don't even like people traditionally don't use air conditioners.
right,
They don't really need to as much, and that's so power grids are going to start failing, like we saw in Texas,
right,
essentially.
right, exactly. So crazy. So well, I mean, I guess the end all be all on that one is like, good luck to the Build Back a Little Bit bill or the Inflation Reduction Act. hopefully in the coming weeks, I'm going to have some folks on to talk more about climate in PA, in particular, what this how people could take advantage of some of this stuff in the Climate Act. I've got some people I've reached out to already. I've been trying to make sense of it. So talk more about that going forward. But I know this is also going to be a huge issue. We're looking forward. I mean, obviously, what's going to be driving a lot of people to the polls this fall is going to be, the overturning of Roe v. Wade. But if anything, at the very least, we can look at what just happened with the signing of this Inflation Reduction Act bill, particularly the climate measures in it. Yes, they're bringing down prescription drugs when it comes to Medicare. There are some other things in the bill that are important. It says that, look, if we just get more people, if we can get a larger majority of Democrats that are kind of elected this year to get behind this kind of legislation, absolutely critical. And we need that at the state level too as well. So.
Of course. I mean, and there's things in it too that I mean that are really simple projects. I'm looking at it right now, and it says, the Urban and Community Forestry Program. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the New Deal. I know, Kevin, you are.
Yeah.
But during the New Deal, during the Depression, trees were planted, in the Dust Belt area, in the 1930s to help save some of the soil and stuff like that, and also to try and help cool down areas. And that's essentially what they're talking about here. But instead of putting these out in these large rural areas, they're talking about putting them in neighborhoods and cities, right? Yep. So that'll help reduce the amount of heat that's being let out by, just concrete and pavement and buildings and just a large amount of people and cars in one spot. So I actually went down and I did this. Like, if you go down to Philadelphia and you go through their historic district, it's nice and cool.
Yep.
But if you start going outside of those neighborhoods and you start going into more low income housing portions of the city, it's definitely it's got to be 5-10 degrees hotter.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, it's programs like these that you would think would be nonpartisan, right? Because trees benefit everybody.
Yep.
But unfortunately, Republicans are just it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to them.
Well, no, and even like Joe Manchin on this one too is a perfect example, because in the original Build Back Better bill, there was a provision there, just like during the New Deal, they had there's a civilian conservation corps, right, that they put in there, and there was another program that basically they hired people, right, to go plant those trees, right?
Yeah.
And the whole idea was during the New Deal is like, not only are you doing good work, right, that needs to be done, you're serving as a kind of a way to kind of have like good paying jobs for people to do necessary work for communities. And that was in the original, it was called like the Climate Conservation Corps or the Climate Corps, something like this. And it was
the CCC.
Yeah, it was championed by the Sunrise Movement, and that was the whole idea, is that you'd have a core of folks that actually it would boost the economy because you have good paying jobs, especially for younger folks, right?
Yep.
Who could come out and you do this for a year and you go out into these communities and that's what you do, right? You're planting trees, you're doing kind of like things that are going to actually benefit communities and the climate. But of course, Manchin insisted on stripping that from the bill. So now there's some provisions that kind of help some of that stuff, which is great. Don't get me wrong. But imagine what it would like if it was direct investment, where say, okay, no, we're going to create this and we're going to employ people to do it.
Yeah.
That means that boom, 2023, that program would be off and running, right down the street from you. So let's kind of make sure that we can push that forward going. Get people in office that are actually going to push that going forward. So.
Definitely. And they have models to go off of. Like,
yeah.
they've done these things before. Like, this legislation has been passed before. Like, people have done this type of work before, and it worked. Like, it worked. So I don't. It's just frustrating. It's just, I always come back to that. It's just frustrating because I'm trying to understand, why like someone like Manchin would oppose something like that. It just.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it has a lot to do with who's the people who are writing him checks, right? I think that's what it is.
Yeah, right.
Crazy. All right, well, and then the one thing, Liz Cheney lost her. That was the other big news thing this week. Liz Cheney lost her.
All week.
Yeah, her primary, and now it's like, oh my God, what's got Liz Cheney? What's next for her, and all this stuff. And this is my kind of weekly reminder that Liz Cheney is not a friend.
No, she is not.
Right. And yes,
she is not.
Yes.
Because she's doing her job and sees through the big lie. I don't really feel like we need to commend her for doing that, right? Because
No.
this is what she should be doing.
Right. Like, let's be clear. Liz Cheney voted for Donald Trump more than Lindsey Graham voted for Donald Trump, right? In like in terms of the voting, she is a dyed-in-the-wool right-wing conservative. Now, I can say that. At the same time, I can also say she's doing a great job in the January 6th commission. Both of those things could be true at the same time. Right? So,
she's part of the problem that got, she's part of the reason of why she's in this position to begin with, right? Like,
100%. I mean, so like, this is just what Democrats, just like everyday Democrats, got to get through their head, right? We do not need to elevate Republicans and conservatives to the hero status, right? Because they've done something like competent and like, did their job. We don't need to do that. We can say we're glad they're doing it, and all the more reason we need to get the rest of them out of office because they're the ones who cause this problem. Can we just do that and not have to talk about, well, will Democrats switch parties to vote for Liz? Get me a freaking break. So that's it.
I tell you what, I was getting quite frustrated all week because I kept turning on the news, trying to hear what was going on. And it was just all Liz Cheney, all Liz Cheney, all Liz Cheney. Oh my gosh. I was like, I'm done. I'm done for this week with her.
Yep. I hear you. All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little about the school boards back in session, maybe get into a little bit of the wondrous world of trolldom that is we're getting a master class from the Fetterman campaign on that one this week, too, as well, once again. We'll talk about that. I want to remind you that you can help support this show by heading over to patreon.com/rcpress. That's patreon.com/rcpress, where you can help support this show by becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month. We'll be back right after this quick break with more and more and more.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1909. That was the day that a committee of the industrial workers of the world in Spokane, Washington, published the first edition of the Little Red Songbook. The collection were songs to fan the flames of discontent. Perhaps more than any other labor organization in the United States, members of the IWW understood the power of art to tell the workers' stories. IWW members created music, visual art, and writing to draw people to the cause of labor and to build solidarity among workers. Richard Brazier was an IWW musician who served on the Spokane committee that compiled the collection. He explained, "What first attracted me to the IWW was its songs and the gusto with which its members sang them. Such singing, I thought, was good propaganda, since it had originally attracted me, and many others as well, and also useful, since it held the crowd for wobbly speakers who followed." The original Little Red Songbook included songs such as Solidarity Forever and the French song The Internationale. 30 editions of the pocket-sized book were published between 1909 and 1995. They have included labor songs from musicians such as Joe Hill, Ralph Chaplin, and T-Bone Slim. John Reed, a former IWW journalist, reflected on the organization's powerful connection to music. He wrote, "Remember, this is the only American working class movement which sings. Tremble then at the IWW, for a singing movement is not to be beaten." Do you have a favorite labor song? Solidarity forever. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. Solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong. When the union...
Welcome back, everybody. This is Kevin Mahoney here once again with Amy Knecht, bringing you the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. So, Amy, I understand that the school boards are back in session here in Bucks County.
Yes, they are. I was not fortunate enough to catch Monday's meeting from Penridge. But I did go to Palisades on Wednesday. That's my own district. So it was, to be honest, it was pretty uneventful. It was a small meeting. We had it in the library of the high school. Sometimes they have them in the auditorium. Not a whole heck of a lot was going on. Nothing crazy interesting. However, towards the end of the meeting, there were some incidents actually that happened in our district the past few weeks, and we had a couple of irate parents show up for that. So, oh man, so on Wednesday, August 10th, let's see, a district maintenance worker discovered that the press box at our football stadium had been broken into, and that there was a note that was left, and it contained racial slurs, which is fabulous, right? Just what we need.
Right.
But in addition to that, there was also an incident at one of our elementary schools that showed two male figures who were actively trespassing and trying to, get into the building. I know that there's an ongoing investigation for this, but the problem of what happened is that at the school board meeting, these parents showed up and they wanted to know why that the Saucon source had scooped up the story before parents were alerted to what had happened, right? Now, I don't know the deal with the Saucon source. All I do know is that they could have gotten tipped off, right, and published it. Our superintendent was being verbally attacked at the meeting by one woman, and she went up there, and Kevin, oh man, she had longer nails, and there's a podium, and she was slamming her nails onto the podium very loudly, very loudly. It was, and she's demanding to know, like how the schools are keeping kids safe. Why weren't people notified? It was 4 days later, and her information was completely wrong. Emails went out a day after the Saucon source had released their article, right? So, and we checked on this. So she was falsely claiming that, nobody got emails, that she dropped the ball, that the schools aren't doing their job. I mean, here they're engaged in an active, open investigation with the state police going off of state police guidance on how you should, how you should approach this particular problem. And I understand parents, right, showing up at a school board meeting upset by something like this, right? That there's a break-in. Oh my gosh, like this is a big deal, especially in our current climate, right, of society, and with school shootings on the rise. But she was over the top, right? Over the top, very rude, demanding answers, not following procedures of school board procedures, right? Like wanting to know answers. It got to be the point where our superintendent just stopped talking to her. Like there was no, it was just like, what else are you going to do? And when I went up there and I had made a brief comment and I wanted it to go on record that no, it wasn't 4 days later when these emails went out. It was a day later. A day later, emails went out stating that there was an incident, and the school has been very good so far. They released, the video surveillance to parents to be able to maybe help identify these people. Like they've taken all of these proper steps.
Right,
so.
right.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't quite as exciting as Penridge or Central Bucks, but it was that. And like I said, I just felt that the approach of the parents was just really uncalled for, very uncalled for. I don't think that our superintendent dropped the ball. I think that they have been in wonderful communication with, with the community about this incident. So, and also too, like, because they want to know security measures. Like, so parents were basically demanding to know the security measures that are going to be in place. And our board president was like, we're not telling you that. That's not something that we're going to publicly go off and state right now. And I guess it's for safety concerns, I guess developing plans and stuff like that. I'm not sure of all the logistics of it, but I understand that if there's going to be measures put in place, that they're going to be finalized before they're just thrown out there in a meeting that somebody came up to and asked these questions, right? Like It's not, and like I said, I believe that there's still like an investigation going on too. So the school's only allowed to divulge so much at that point. So I don't know, but we had one of those people, he showed up and he demanded, he's like, well, who do you work for? And blah, 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 blah. And we pay your salary, or we pay taxes and all that stuff.
Well, I think it's like I think what's been happening in the school boards over the past several years has set the stage for something like this right, for people to behave in those ways, because that's been the new bar. You know, even when it's something where it's not incompetence, right? It's not like, you know, people are ignoring a problem, but you have general concerns. It's like, you know, it's either you go 0 to 60, and then it's obviously there's some kind of conspiracy, or that, you know, these people are wasting our money, or they're ignoring our concerns, as opposed to showing up in a meeting just to be able to kind of say, well, what can we do to help? Right? You know, I mean, it's pretty crazy.
It is. And like I said, the woman was very upset that a newspaper picked it up. And it's just like, the school doesn't have control over journalists or newspapers, or if they hear about a story. Like, I don't understand. And I think sometimes that people, especially now, feel that the school boards have way more power than they actually do, right? To mitigate certain situations and things. And I don't think people really realize that. Like, it's not like a governing body where they make all the decisions. They don't. You know, sometimes, like, even just trying to explain certain federally mandated programs, right? Schools have to have. You can't just be like, we're not going to have these, but trying to explain that to parents who don't understand the process. You know, and that's just plain ignorance, right, on that part. So, well,
it's ignorance, and it's the fact that once you've kind of like, you created a cultural climate in which the school boards are the kind of the portal that is opening opening and letting the demons from hell escape into your community, right? Where it's become it's like the passage to the upside down, right? Runs through your school boards, and that's really what's been cultivated, right? You know, it gives this school board this larger than life place, and again, it's very, very purposeful. And, you know, you can't control it. Once that genie's out of the bottle, you can't control, like, you know, people are going to only deal with it on, you know, race issues, or only going to deal with it on gender issues. No, it's going to just become the way that people engage with the school board. And it creates this, I don't know, this really untenable kind of thing, you know, this situation. But
well, and like when I went up there, and my comment was brief because I was upset, right? Because the woman was going off about like just misinformation. It wasn't true. And I walked up there. I said, I got my email a day afterwards. And when I said that, she was in the back and she's like, no, no, not true, or something like that. She said, I forget, or like not possible. And I'm like, well, I could show you. I can show you.
Right, bring it up on my phone right here. Here it is. There's the date stamp. Conspiracy. Italian satellites manipulating your phone.
I mean, and there's always the possibility, right, that some people may have not gotten it. Emails fall through cracks, especially at the beginning of a new school year. I don't really know. But everybody I talked to got them. So.
Right. Well, there you have it.
But that's it. That pretty much concludes the exciting nature of Palisades. Like I said, they're not banning books. They're not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good. I'd rather have boring meetings, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, and that's, you know, again, I wish I could say the same thing. What's happened in Pennridge is the Pennridge, the school board this past week, they had another round of dealing with their new kind of anti-expression policy that they want to put through, again, being ushered through and being led by Joan Cullen, who's the head of the school board. And the idea there is basically they're trying to limit what students can say and not. Now, if you don't know anything about what's been happening for the past 8 years, right, and you have Joan Cullen is very skilled at basically coming up and sounding like, well, we're just trying to make sure our kids have a good education, and that it's when the materials are appropriate. I don't understand what all the fuss is about, right? I mean, if you just like plopped here out of time, right, you might not understand why people are so upset with her, right, or why we get our students worked up, but the fact is like when you understand what they mean by what they're trying to take away, is they're trying to, like, for example, they already kind of stripped like the being able to, for teachers to be able to put up like the rainbow flag to signal this is a safe place, right? If you are an LGBTQ youth, right? This is a safe space here. Like we respect everybody here, right? And it's not to say that like therefore and like we are anti-heterosexual. That's not the point, right? The point is we are welcoming to everybody, which is what a school is supposed to be, right?
It is.
Or when people put up things about kind of like the importance of diversity, right? Or God forbid they were to say that, oh my God, slavery is what built the foundation of this country, or genocide was committed against kind of American Indians. Like, oh no, that is political. You're not allowed to say that within the schools. Basically, what this policy will allow is the school board and these designees of the superintendent to basically ban certain books, ban students from being able to say particular things, prevent them from wearing particular slogans on this, prevent them from, say, for example, they have a group in the community that is like, you know, basically all behind, say, diversity or all behind LGBTQ kind of rights. And they decide that they have a group and the group is like, you know, Bucks for Pride or whatever. And they wear their Bucks for Pride shirt that comes from outside the school and they wear it in the school. They will not be allowed to wear this. Right? Does it guarantee that will happen? No, but it leaves it in the hands of the people who run the school board and who are determine the power structure within a Penridge school board. And so now you have the Bucks County NAACP, the National Human Rights Campaign, right? The Center for the Foundation for Individual Rights, the ACLU, the National Coalition Against Censorship, are all like have this school district like front and center in the battle against censorship and the battle of kind of attempts to kind of rework the curriculum. What we just saw down in Florida, that we have a new curriculum that is going into effect this fall. They brought teachers. Did you hear about this stuff?
No.
They trained. They had a bunch of teachers who basically went to these special teacher trainings. They were given $700 to kind of to attend these training sessions during the summer. And one of the teachers, who was like a fairly new teacher, basically blew the whistle on it, which is like, oh my God. They're basically rewriting the curriculum so that, you know, slavery doesn't sound that bad, or maybe we just don't talk about it so much, right? It's basically a historical revisionism that's being put into the curriculum, right? And so, you know, this is the, you know, not just the don't say gay bill, but now we're actually talking about the revision of what those kids are learning in Florida. And it happened in the exact same way that it's happening here in Penridge and in Bucks County.
Yep.
So that's why you've got all these national organizations with their like focused on what's happening here in Penridge. Now, they didn't pass it yet. They had to give it the second reading, and apparently there was a lot of like, oh, clarifications. People just must have misunderstood what was in the bill because it was titled student and staff expression. But that's really not what it is. Of course, that's what it is. Right. And the whole purpose behind what they're happening in the new policy is and they have a lawyer now that are helping them craft the language to try to avoid the legal pressure so they could still enact the policy. And they've hired Penridge has it. Yep. And they've what's that? I'm sorry.
Central Bucks is doing the same thing. I didn't realize that Penridge was hiring a PR company as well.
Oh yeah, they hired a PR company and they got a lawyer. The PR company is going to help them with their message, right? So this is bad stuff which is going on.
Well, so Cullen, when she was talking about that expression, I was at the one meeting and she's talking about it, you know, oh, well, we're not going to stop people from wearing, you know, like you can wear a cross around your neck and stuff like that. I'm just like, how is that different from wearing a pride pin?
Look, my son and I, my kids and I talk. My son's like infuriated by this, right? And he's like, he wears like gamer T-shirts. You know what I mean? It's like, so it's not like, or just these kind of like design things. So he's not one to go in there with like, you know, kind of, he's not like, he doesn't, it was me, like, I'm like, wear my, you know, whatever, politics on my sleeve, right? Like he's not like that, right? But he's so furious at like what they could do. And then he said to me, well, can somebody what happens if somebody has an American flag on their shirt? That's a political statement. What happens if they have a cross that they're wearing? Like I said, yeah. I said, if you ask me, it's like, that's where student organizations could be actually critical. If I was a student and I saw another student that was wearing a cross, I would file a complaint. If I see them and I saw them with an American flag on, I would file a complaint. Right. Yeah. The point is not that you're offended by the cross. The point is not that you're offended by the flag. The point is to expose what is actually happening.
Exactly.
Right. There's a reason why rent was canceled, for example, at the Penridge School District. And yet, just last week, or 2 weeks ago, last week, big thing on the Penridge School District thing is like, guess what? Oh, we're so happy to have our students involved with this year's production of Godspell.
Wait, what? Oh
Oh
man,
yeah, they had
I'm
this like
I'm
big.
a little behind on this. I didn't
Oh
know that
yeah,
either.
they had this big thing. Joan Cullen said, "Oh yeah, I remember when we did Godspell. How great that was." People who don't know what Godspell is basically a musical retelling of the Gospel of what Matthew, right?
What? That's such an unusual musical to be doing in a school.
Well,
At
it's
least
like
to
it's
me.
technically it was over the summer and there's this playhouse thing like this, but it was on the school district's website about the school, the school and about Godspell. Joan Cullen comes in, boom, she comments, "This is so great that they're doing this," and that happens in the context after they canceled Rent because there's gay people in it.
No, that's what Rent's about. Like it's about
Right.
yeah.
And so that's the context, right? And this is where it's so important that we constantly expose what they're doing and expose the hypocrisy and then expose the illegality of what they're trying to put through as quote unquote neutral policies. I mean, it's going to be good. So the next board meeting is on the 22nd, which is this coming Monday. They are attempting to push this policy through before the start of the school year. There's a big question about whether they're going to be able to do that. So if you are able to attend the Penn Ridge School Board meeting, do so on Monday evening. I think it starts at 7:00. And depending on what we have on our show on Monday, for Out to Coop Live, I'll either give you updates for that or we'll kind of do a special kind of readout on it the following day. So
Yeah.
pretty crazy. So yeah, so that's what we got going on here, kind of in Penn Ridge, and it's I wish well, no, I don't wish that we had the same problems that you have at Palisades, because that's
It's
not good
different.
either.
No, it's
But-
different. I think that we don't. So they're not banning books up here so much, right? Like my daughter, she has a required reading list. Like they still have to read Mouse.
Yeah.
I think they're not doing things that Central Bucks is and that Penn Ridge is, and I'm really grateful for that. But at the same point, there are problems. There's a lot of racism up in our area. That's just people don't want to admit to.
Right.
So, but other, I mean, it could be worse at the moment, at least in regards to policy.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so we end maybe we can end on a little bit of a high note. So have you been enjoying the Fetterman Oz wars this week?
Yes, I thought, yeah. Fetterman is brilliant. He takes everything thrown at him, like he's great, man. He takes it right to the chin and he throws it right back out in a comical way, and it's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. But this past week was great. I watched the video of Dr. Oz pretending to shop at a grocery store that doesn't exist.
Wegner's.
Wegner's.
That's the bastard child of Wegmans and Redner's, by the way, if you don't know who that is.
And he's picking out some kind of vegetables, and he's just like gathering this all up in his arms. He has no basket. He's being filmed. And then the thing that I missed the comment about the crudité. But he said something about salsa. And it was a prepackaged thing of salsa, and it was $6.99. And he's like, "Oh, it's so expensive. There must be a shortage of salsa." Like, I don't think there's a shortage of salsa. I think prices are just up. He's completely clueless.
Well, and not only that is like if you are in the produce section, right, and then there's salsa in the produce section in the container that he had. This is your fresh salsa. Right. This is and the fresh salsa, which is made like daily or every other day, is more expensive. Yeah. Right. Just as the beginning part. If you want to save some money, you head out over to the chip aisle right next to Tostitos. There's these little jars of salsa that are significantly less than that.
And there's no shortage of those. Trust me.
No. As a matter of fact, if you really want, you can actually buy the cheese dip and the ranch dip too right next to it. You can have all sorts of things to dip your veggies into, right? And it was the weirdest thing because it was clear that the guy, I mean, I was saying this to my wife too, is this is when you start to think that Oz is the people who work for Oz, his campaign people, they're checked out, right? They're like, yeah, this guy's a disaster, but we're going to do whatever he wants to do because we're getting a paycheck. Because how do you let something like that go? Right. And
didn't some of the Republicans like stop funding him or something like that? There was like
Maybe,
funding
yeah.
stopped for his advertising budget. I don't know.
Yeah, and maybe that's it too. Maybe he just has to have one of his family members to kind of like hold the phone for him while he does his stupid stuff, and it's all his own. But I mean, like the guy is. I mean, you show up at a place like that, and like, I mean, literally, he's picking. Look how much this is, and there's a sign behind him that says, $3.99 a pound, right? And he's got this one piece of veg. Look, $3.99 for this. No. If you take that, you put it in a bag, and you reach a pound, then it's $3.99. Not for that one little piece that you got there.
I wonder if he's ever even done his own grocery shopping.
Exactly. Well, he's the kind of guy. The fact that he's going shopping for crudité, right, and not a veggie freaking tray, right? I mean, that's like one of my favorite things that Fetterman did, right? He just got this like. He's got in Pennsylvania, we call it this. And he's got like a plastic wrapped veggie that says veggie tray.
Did you see the sign that they put up over one of the bridges? I think it's the Betsy Ross. Was it the Betsy Ross?
I didn't
bridge?
know.
I don't remember. But there's a sign that says, I think it says you're leaving. I forget what it said, but it was like you're leaving PA and you're heading back to the home state of Dr. Oz or something like that.
Yes. I did see that. Yes. It's great. It's great.
I love it.
He's just trolling. He's just trolling them like so hard, and the Oz campaign is just not up to it. I mean, he was never really up for it, but he's like, they're not. They try to troll back, and it's just kind of cringy. It's just not very good. So
yeah, he's trying to make out that John Fetterman is this like communist rebel or something like that. I mean, and he's not. He's not. He just, he has a really good rapport with people, I think, and he knows what it's like to be an average citizen, and I think that right there in itself is the important factor of knowing what it's like to be an average citizen, right? Not of that top percent tier that's runs everything. And I think we need more people like that,
Well, look, I mean, yeah, and I think
into the Senate.
Yeah, no, and I think that, Fetterman is like, there's people like Fetterman, don't like Fetterman, whatever it might be, right? But the thing is that what you see from John Fetterman is what you've been seeing for John Fetterman for as long as John Fetterman has been involved in politics, right? I mean, this is he's not trying to pretend to be somebody who he's not. Where Oz is trying to remake himself as the everyman when he's got like 8 houses, where he doesn't even live in the state that he's running in, and he just thinks that he can come in and kind of pretend to be this guy that he's not. So there you have it. But he'll make some money off of it, so there's that.
Yeah, I'm really curious as to what percentage of the vote that he's going to get. Like I'm really curious about that one.
I think he's going to get it. I mean, I think he'll get at least. I would put it at least about 43% to start.
Do you think?
Yep.
Because I know that there's a lot. The extreme Republicans call him a rhino, so he's not.
Right.
I don't know.
Ultimately, all the people for all those things that all those people say, right? At the end of the day, the vast majority of them are going to just vote because it's a Republican.
Probably.
And so I think that I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday. I said, look, I think that you're going to have. I think he'll still get about 43% of the vote. That's if I everybody could quote me on that. That's what I'm going to put in for right now.
43% of the
right.
vote. I'm going to write that down.
I am not an analyst, right, by any stretch of the imagination. But that's my gut feeling at this point. And my reasoning is this: is that one is that Republicans vote for Republicans, right? They and the Republicans who vote who have kind of left the kind of Trump train. I don't believe that those folks are coming over and going to vote Democratic. I think those folks are just not going to vote.
It's either that or they're going to vote like a write-in or some other person.
Or they're going to vote for the offices that they think that they've got candidates they agree with, and just going to leave the other ones blank. I think that's more likely the scenario of what's going to happen. It's going to happen. Yes, there will be some Republicans who will vote for a Democratic candidate, but in Oz's thing, I think you're going to get basically a straight kind of your core Republicans, and they're going to hold their nose for it, whatever, and they're going to vote for Oz. So I put it at 43%.
He looks like the Green Goblin from Spider-Man.
That's a good call.
Isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Is it the Green Goblin? Yeah, it's
yes.
the Green Goblin. He looks like the Green Goblin.
That is a good
from
call.
The cartoon. Like I'm going like way back to the cartoon.
Oh, man.
Like, he looks a little bit like the Green Goblin.
I see a great meme. right? Except he's like but he's like the incompetent Green Goblin, right?
Oh,
I mean, like he's the one who's gonna throw his like bombs, and instead of like them exploding, it's gonna be like, you know, I don't know, like
somebody
caviar.
needs to do that. Caviar bombs. No, it would be. What did you say it was? Crudité bombs.
Yeah, I had to be coached on that, by the way, because just so everybody, I had no idea what it was, really. I told my wife, she's like, "You don't know what that is?" I'm like, "I have no idea." And I'm sure, like, all my like academic friends are like, "You don't know what crudité is?" And I'm like, "I have no freaking clue what crudité is. I know what a veggie tray is, though. I do know that." So there's some things that I will just never kind of get my head around. But
somebody needs to make that meme. Somebody has to make that meme with him throwing a crudité bomb.
Yeah, the Green Goblin throwing a crudité. That'd be great. I love it. Well, that's what we got for this week, everybody. So I say this week's last call for me. Like I said, there's some really cool stuff happening if any D&D folks out there. And like I say, this is my opening offer to anybody who's within our listening audience. Listen to our podcast, watch our thing. If anybody ever wants to kind of get into a pool of folks who would love to do a little kind of D&D campaign here and there, let me know. I think that'd be kind of a real fun thing to do with listeners in the community down the road at some point. But the big news is that this is kind of that connection there. Wizards of the Coast, who owns the kind of D&D, they basically had some huge announcement this week. And one, they're talking about their next kind of rule set, which is going to be called 1D&D. Right now, the D&D Dungeons and Dragons is in its fifth edition. This is and it has been the most kind of like popular edition yet. It's opened it up to kind of like people who've never even thought about playing it before. And there's a lot of good reasons why. The revisions they made it less. You need to. There's more emphasis on narrative and less emphasis on math, although math is pretty, you still have to do all these kind of rolls and dice and all that kind of stuff. But the narrative component, I think, is really kind of amped it up. And also the way that they deal with characters in character development and kind of opening up the game to more folks, which has been great. And so the next set, which is called 1D&D, that's what they're calling it at this point, is not going to, it's going to be compatible with all the 5e stuff, but it's going to open up even some more possibilities according to them. We shall see. I signed up for their play testing stuff where they give you the things. I've got this one here, for example, the Unearth Arcana is their first thing that they did. It's for character origins, and they're basically asking people in the community, say, hey, check this out. This is the kind of thing that we're thinking about. And then they're going to have like feedback and opportunities to work with it and suggestions and that kind of stuff. And they're going to be launching the whole thing, I guess, in 2024, but slowly kind of bringing this stuff out to the community to work with. And the thing that I'm most excited about is that throughout the pandemic, that's when I think was one of the reasons why this exploded so much, is that you were able to kind of play online. There was all these digital tools and companies that were in organizations and free tools that were trying to find ways that people could play online with each other. A lot of folks just use Zoom and Google Docs and things like this, but then there was like Roll20, which was a really kind of cool platform which you could play with your friends kind of digitally. However, there was a big kind of learning curve to get up and stuff started on it. And there were some other ones that were cool too as well, but they were clunky or they were not as reliable. Well, Dungeons and Dragons just bought this place called D&D Beyond, which is basically this online platform for say character development and use some digital tools to kind of help play in a digital fight and to give you access to all these rule books and these adventures and stuff like this online. So they just bought that, but they're keeping all the folks who ran D&D Beyond. They're still doing it, so they're working together apparently. And now they're going to launch a platform that is going to be existing right on that site too as well, that will allow you to play kind of digitally with friends, which I'm really looking forward to. They're using the Unreal Engine, which is video gamers know kind of what that is, and it generates these open worlds. It's got amazing graphics, but they're going to keep that kind of tabletop feel to it, so it doesn't feel like a video game. It still feels like that tabletop environment. And they say they're going to be rolling some of that trial stuff out soon too as well. So I'm excited about that. And yes, Wizards of the Coast or anybody that's associated with them, if you ever decide that you're looking for someone to sponsor you, or you're looking for someone to sponsor, I'd be happy to. So you want to throw money my way to help support your product, I'll do it because I'm already doing it. But I'll say this too as well, just as a fun note on this, is that we started my kids and some of their friends, my niece. We just started our first campaign. We did some kind of small ones, kind of periodically over the past kind of several months and year, but we just started a kind of campaign, and we're kind of working on it, and it's been an absolute blast already. And it's the kind of thing where this is my first time DMing, as I've said before, dungeon mastering, so running the game. And so no matter how much you plan ahead, you're always going to get people who are going to do things you don't expect. And my kids and my niece and their friends have certainly lived up to that. It's been everything time we played, it's been completely unexpected, gone in directions I would not have planned for, and it's been a whole lot of freaking fun. Just amazing to be in that kind of creative kind of improv environment. So that's pretty cool.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah. So any kind of, say, fun stuff out of your way? Things you're reading, things you're doing?
Well, reading. I'm always reading something. Not anything unusual at the moment. I am reading The Lord of the Rings to my son. He really likes it. There's some of my favorite stories anyway. So not really something like fun, but I just wanted to throw this out there. So today at 3 p.m. on East Broad Street in Quakertown, there's going to be a pro-choice rally. There's a group of people who are out there every Friday between 3 and 4 o'clock till it goes, till later on in the evening as well. But there are people out there protesting over the SCOTUS decision of overturning Roe. They could really use the support. So if anybody has anything, some free time later on today, I think today it starts at 3 o'clock. So it's on East Broad Street. So there's in Quakertown, if you go downtown, there's like a little triangle-shaped park in the middle of like an intersection, and that's where they're going to be. You won't be able to miss them.
Awesome. So 3 p.m. out there in Quakertown, center of Quakertown. If you can make it out there, fantastic. So excited to see kind of folks getting out there and continuing stuff going on. I was, we were at that kind of rally a couple of weeks ago, right before I talked to Mark Pinsley, or a week ago. I can't even remember how long ago things are anymore. There's been people who have been staying active, and it's just really, really great to see. So very cool. I don't know if somebody's calling me. Oh well. But I'm sure it's going to be like, "Hello, your prescription's ready," or something like this. Oh, crazy. Well, Amy, listen, I really appreciate you kind of taking time, and I'm sorry it's taken so long to kind of get us back on track here, but
Fine.
it's fantastic. Thank you all out there for kind of hanging in there with us. I want to remind you that you can help support this show by simply sharing this and letting other folks know about it. I really appreciate all the folks who stay with us on Twitter, who are constantly getting the word out and supporting our show. Thank you. And you can help support this show, kind of keep it growing, by heading over to patreon.com/rcpress and become a patron today. Amy, I wish you the best of weekend and for the last week of summer before the kids head back to school.
Oh, yeah. You too.
Yeah, there you have it. All right, this is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken. We'll be back on Monday. We might have a guest, we might not have a guest, but we'll be back into a rhythm starting next week. Till then, everybody, keep it going. See ya!
I'll fly away.